Welcome back. Welcome back. Did you all miss me? I missed you. I was gone for a couple of weeks. Why? Why was I gone for a couple of weeks? My schedule was bananas. Banana boats. So welcome back to season 2, episode 3 of Elephant in the Room. And we are chiming right into the spring. Next week, you don't want to miss it. I am going to do my spiritual show. Remember, every fifth show, I'm going to do a spiritual enlightenment. The sun is so bright. I don't know if I'm be able to get this to look a little better. It's so bright. That's a little bit better, I think. Neighbors cutting their lawn next door. So I hope you can hear the comedic meditation music that I put up. I think I've been figuring out how to get this to feed through as far as sound, because sometimes I play the videos for you all and it's not coming through, and I'm still working through that aspect. But we are into episode 3, and so next week we're going to do a spiritual show. Where we delve into our spirituality, trying to understand what's going on. Last night and over the weekend, and over the last couple of weeks, I've been participating in different adventures with business ventures with some people that I know, and so I've been attending events and trying to get my name out there so that I can get more people to participate in this Black empowerment, because I do want to partner with people and bring more to us as far as solutions are concerned. And so I've also been on my weight loss venture. I don't know if you all could tell. I feel like I could tell my face is slimming down. And that has been in part mostly due to my diet. I've been changing my diet. So um, the month of March, I gave up carbonate drinks. And that was difficult because, carbonate drinks are a large part of our childhood. We used to call it pop, me growing up. And Down south they call it soda. You say pop that. They don't know what you're talking about, but they know what I'm talking about because I tell them it's soda pop, right? They be like, oh yeah, you know what I was talking about the whole time. But I've eliminated pop out of my diet, so no carbonate drinks at all, and I've done very well with that. This month has been a bigger challenge. I have eliminated sugar, so white granulated sugar specifically. If I can still sweeten with brown sugar, I will, but I haven't had the real need to use brown sugar. I've just been trying to eliminate the added sweeteners. The only thing I would say I probably failed in with that is maybe like I'll drink a Powerade, which that has a ton of sugar in it. So I've substituted that for water. I just do the water. And when I want something sweetened, I'll do honey, as a natural sweetener. A lot of people told me molasses. I don't really like the taste of molasses. And there was another sweetener someone told me about, but I do follow a Facebook page. I would have to pull up his page, and he's just all in. He's completely vegan, and so he lives a vegan lifestyle, which is even more difficult and a challenge I want to take one day, if not for 6 months to a year, but for at least some time to see if I can get through that challenge. That's not an easy challenge because a lot of the foods that we grow up eating um, are definitely uh, just a part of our makeup. And so let me see if I can pull up this page. Okay, so the Facebook page is called Alkaline Plant-Based Diet, Dr. Sebi Inspire. I will put in the comments as I usually do when I refer something. This brother is very powerful. I really like his vibes. He throws on there a couple of issues that affect our society. He raises a lot of questions. He's not very judgy. He just seems to be very open and very positive brother. That's the vibe that I get off of him. Um, and uh, I've added some people on there, hopefully they have an interest in it. And I see that they've joined and they maybe follow. But his Facebook name is, I'm probably pronouncing this wrong, Akil Anais. I apologize, but you'll see the host of the page on there. Like I said, very positive brother. Shout outs to him. Um, just trying to establish this relationship with us as far as Black entrepreneurs, Black people who are positive, who are trying to, get our people to a more holistic way of life, returning to a more African central existence. Because right now we've been following a more Western Eurocentric trend, and if we really look at it, I don't think, if we look at the numbers as far as how we're doing in our society, I don't believe that we are doing the best that we could be doing. I think that there's a lot more to stand to get better. Okay, and so homage to the ancestors. I like to remember to do that when I come on. The kinetic sounds I play are beginning to mean a lot deeper meaning to me, because they are reminiscent of a tone. I'm learning more about tonage. I've been doing a lot of study, a lot of research still. I've been buying a lot more books. As I finish my semester up in college for this semester, I am going to really delve into some summer reading with a goal of reading a book a day. Um, in my downtime at work, at home, I want to spend a lot of time reading in between whatever leisure activities I choose. Also over this weekend, like I was telling y'all, I visited some people at events that they had. I visited the Chi-Town versus Houston at the Duck Off Bar. It was very nice because it felt so family. It felt like when Black folks hang out and it's just peace and calm and no drama and we just have a good time. Nobody's fussing. Folks talking a lot of junk. It was dominoes going on. It was spades going on. There were food vendors out there. I did support the food vendors. I got some fish and fries, which again, like I said, I'm trying to curb my diet, but I do support my people. And I got a beef brisket. I ate about a quarter of it. I didn't eat a lot of it. It was just a beef brisket sandwich. It seasoned very well. He had pulled pork there. He had chicken as well. So I chose the beef brisket. I like brisket, and I tasted that, and it was good. I didn't eat it all, but unfortunately, one of the business owners or managers, or I wasn't sure his title, but he was definitely in charge in some capacity, threw away my sandwich. And so I was like, I didn't finish eating that. I just set it there to take a picture. And he was like, oh, I'm so sorry. He offered to buy me another one. I was like, no. He offered to buy me a drink. I was like, no, it's okay. But it was just funny the way it all played out. He was like, where did you have it? Where did you have it? I'm like, it was just right here. He was like, oh, man. So I snoozed and lose. But it's okay. I only ate a quarter of the sandwich. I knew I wasn't going to finish the whole thing. Um, Tying into my diet, I don't eat as much as I used to. I contribute a lot of my weight loss to taking Dr. Sebi's advice, and that is we eat too much. And so that's not what this show is about, but I'm just kind of dialoguing with you all since I've been gone for a couple of weeks now. Like, oh, the sister just quit. No, it's not that. Sometimes life just gets in the way. And like I told y'all, this show, I plan to do it every Sunday, but if you all are listening to me, you know that um, I shoot for a goal and try to stick to that goal as much as I can and try to be here. But if anything comes up, I usually send you all out an email or something saying, hey, it's delayed, or hey, it's not going down this time. But I did not do that either. So that is my fault. I apologize for those who were counting on this show and who like to listen to the show every week. I apologize in advance. I'm not a perfect person. I make mistakes. It wasn't intentional. It was just timing. It was just timing, the way my schedule planned out, especially towards the end of a college semester. It's difficult to even get the show in and bring to you the things that I bring to you as far as research and information. It's not really that simple as you may think. It requires preparation, and I try to prepare as much as I can. So this episode, we're talking about socialization, learning to navigate multiculturalism. That is the topic of the show. And what do I mean by that? Well, for those of us that are into Black empowerment, into Black nationalism, and into um, a more Afrocentric way of being, um, what is encroaching on that ideology is a multiculturalism ideology. A lot of people are choosing to date outside of their perceived culture group, or sometimes we call it race, which we've talked about race being a construct. And I was able to prove that to you based upon research done by very other well-learned people who actually took the time to go into the field, do the work, provide us with information. So I am stemming off their information, and I believe their information, and there's a consensus to believe their information. So, right, we don't always have to accept what others study and believe. So if I present to you casework, peer-reviewed work, research work, you can still reject that. You can still say, you know what? I don't believe that. I don't believe in that. I don't think it's true. I think it's hogwash. That's your choice, you know. So when I present something, either I believe in it, or I found something that's a pro or con to that, so that you can choose what direction you want to go into. It's not my job to make you think. It's my job to offer information. Okay, but making you think what I believe, no, that's not why I'm here. I'm here to supply information so that you all can make your best decision. Because I find a lot of times out here the information is not made available. People tell you, oh, you go research and you go find it. That's fine, but sometimes people don't always know how to go find the information, and sometimes they need a helping hand. And so I don't mind helping out and providing you where I study from, where I've learned information from. You might say, oh, Maya, that's bull crap, or this, that, and the other. But I have asked you all to interact with me. So if you don't interact with me, all I can assume is that you believe the information or you agree with it. But if you don't agree with it, hit me up, send me an email, say, hey, here's some opposing information I found out, and I look at it. So, um, so we're learning to navigate multiculturalism for those of us who want to separate, for those of us who do not want to be in this multicultural society, for those of us who want to have a so-called quote unquote peer culture, peer race. And so my question to you is, if you believe that, if that is your dynamic, how does that make you different from white supremacist groups? That would be the next challenging question. How does that make you different, right? Doesn't that make you just kind of the same as what they're saying? Aren't they saying the same thing? Like, oh, well, I just want a pure race, a white Aryan race. And if you say, I just want a pure black race, in response, is that response out of hurt and pain of being rejected, or is that response out of truly believing that the cultures need to separate in order for one culture group to gain its strength again, which has been my argument. I do believe there needs to be some form of separation. But my separation kind of comes more into those who identify with with the African experience, delving into those cultures that make sense to them. Because, right, Africa is a continent, right? We always say African, African, but it's a continent with many culture groups built within that, embedded within that. So you go to a different country, you're going to experience a different form of African practice, rituals, and spirituality. and politics. So it's not all just Africa, Africa. We have to understand that these are different countries. They bring different cultures, and those people do not see themselves as the other. So, for example, if you have someone who is Ethiopian, they do not necessarily identify with those who are Kenyan as far as their culture and practices and beliefs. Okay. And so it's important that if we're going to study Africa, if we're going to take our time and become more African centered, we have to really delve into what does that mean. Just like in the United States, you can go to different states and there's different cultures as far as what people do, eat, think, practice, believe in, the politics from state to state. So can you imagine a country or a continent as Africa with different countries? And in those countries, there's provinces. We call states, they have provinces, and then cities, and then communities. Okay, so I think that it may be some ignorance on our part as far as what our belief systems are, as far as what we believe to be true. We think that Africa is just Africa. And I think that's an unfortunate misstep on our part and an ignorance on our part that all African countries are not the same. People in the Congo do not live the same, as people in Mozambique or people in South Africa or people in Sierra Leone. All of these places have been influenced in a different way. Some of them have been colonized, some of them have not. There are parts of Africa that have not been colonized. And so we think that this far-reaching thing that has affected us affects everybody. It does indirectly, but directly it has not. And so, in your further research, you'll come to realize that um, multiculturalism can mean a lot of different things. I guess is the point that I'm making. I'm sorry for this little glare on the screen, but there's no way to really get that off. But it is what it is. So, um, yeah, yeah, that's it in itself. So, that's what we're doing. We're comparing diversity. Now, another thing I pulled up that I found really interesting um, was I pulled up a gross domestic product hierarchy table that talked about the different countries and their worth and how that panned out to their gross domestic product. Okay, which means what is the value of the country based upon their return? Okay, the return on their investments, their money, their exports, their imports, are all feeds into that number of gross domestic product. As a matter of fact, I'll go ahead and try to pull up a working definition of gross domestic product so we can understand that from a more definition concept. Okay, so it describes it as a noun in the English language, gross domestic product. It says the total value of goods produced and services provided in a country during 1 year. Okay, so this is an annual review. Another one also describes it as gross domestic product is a monetary measure of the market value of all final goods and services produced in a period of time. So less your exports and your imports, take those numbers from each other, and you come up with a value. Okay. Um, it also goes on to explain all final goods and services produced in a period, quarterly or yearly of time. Nominal GDP estimates are commonly used to determine the economic performance of a whole country or region and to make international comparisons. Okay, so that's some information. Okay, so when I review the top 10, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Okay, so I did the top 10 and then I added 5 additional just to give you an idea of those countries who are claiming to have the highest gross domestic product. It starts off with the U.S., the United States, at $18 million worth. That's 18 million. Yeah, it's 18 million. China at 11, Japan at 4, Germany at 3. Let me do it this way. So US at 18.6 million, China at 11 point, we'll say 2 million, we'll estimate. Japan at 4.9, so we'll say 5 million. Germany at 3.4 or 5. UK at 2.7. France at 2.5. India at 2. Excuse me, 3. Oh, sorry, I'm yawning. I should be tired. Italy at 1.9. Brazil at 1.8. I'm estimating at this point. Canada at 1.6. And then I put Korea, Russia, Spain, Australia, and Mexico as the next. I don't know why I wrote that on the side. Okay, yeah, that was the next level. I didn't write their numbers down, but that would have been to give you an idea of who's next in line after that first 10: Korea, Russia, Spain, Australia, and Mexico in that order as performing companies according to their GDP. So this is why a lot of people say America is the greatest country in the world because we're performing at a GDP of $18.6 million annually after our wins and losses. Okay, so that means that's considered a financially viable country. Okay. Now, these numbers come from, I pulled this, I believe I'm not mistaken, from the U.S. Department of Health, or U.S. Department of Commerce, I believe it is. So I'll put it up for you where I pulled these numbers from. Now, the other thing that I wrote down as a side note, and I wrote some numbers down, and I kind of went overboard with it. I'm at 2 pages at this point, but I wanted to write down the countries on the African continent. Because if you noticed in that GDP report that I'm giving to you, there's not an African country that's listed on there. Okay. And I'll tell you how this ties into multiculturalism, but I thought it was important to talk about performance and wealth according to the world estimation of it and how it's estimated and decided. Because it's a very interesting concept that all of these are Western influenced countries, if you notice. Even Brazil, Brazil is not out of that. You would say, oh, Brazil, South American, or Japan. Japan, that's Asian. China, that's Asian. Yeah, they're Western influence, whether you like it or not. So interestingly enough, and some of these countries are small in comparison to some of the other countries as far as population, as far as um, number of people and landmass. So coming in at number 20 was Saudi Arabia. At 25, and I know a lot of people are like, oh, that's Middle East. These are African continent countries. Pull out a map if you don't believe me, and look at where these countries lie on the land map. They were once a part of the African continent, and it's been changed over time for political reasons. I need you all to understand that. 25 is Iran. 27 is Nigeria. 30 is the United Arab Emirates. 31 is Egypt. 33 is Israel. 39 is South Africa. 41 is Pakistan. 52 is Iraq. 54 is Qatar. 60 is Sudan. 58 is Morocco. 61 is Angola. 66 is Ethiopia. And 68 is Kenya. So if you're talking about the number of countries in the world, and I would say the top 100 could still be considered performing countries. And I didn't write down the numbers. I'm going to put up the sheet for you. Um, so how do these countries relate into multicultural society? So if you look at it for the U.S., obviously the U.S. is less homogenous um, of a country and has many brain power from many different culture groups. Okay, so the uniqueness of the United States is that the United States is using the brain power of everybody and the resources of everybody to make a come up. And so that should make you think about if multiculturalism works or it doesn't. I'm not saying I agree with one aspect or another. I told you what my position is. I do believe that especially African American community needs to separate and branch out our own and see how we perform in that way and living inside this country. We just need to learn to steer our dollars to ourselves and see how the economics work for us in that way. We don't have to create a whole another country and worry about sovereignty and military. That's a whole nother animal to have to worry about those things. But we can strategically plan our dollars to work within our community. That's why, the Jewish are considered, you always heard the term greedy Jew, right? That term didn't come from nowhere. It came because people realized that the Jewish community was siphoning the money into their own community. I always use the Jewish community because they went through some form of a Holocaust, right, according to history, and somehow, some way, they found themselves back on top. Okay, so when you are evaluating, if you're going to be a very objective analysis type of individual and you want to look at things for what they are without bias, you're going to look at what is happening within a group. And so the Jewish community doesn't really play into multiculturalism except to work with others to bring more money back into their community. That's how they use multiculturalism. Right now, the African American community uses multiculturalism as we include people to say, hey, love us, be a part of our group. And we end up selling ourselves short because we sell our brand to other people and they take that brand and they change it and they make it into something, some variation thereof. And we end up losing because we get no credit. We don't get any credit for what we create. Okay, and that's our challenge. Other groups, look at all the music that has been being remade. People have been remaking music for years, by the way, right? So we can't really say that people are stealing. But what is happening is that this music is being remade and it doesn't sound anything like or give any homage or praise to its creator, which is us. They did it with Earth, Wind, and Fire. And I think I just saw something recently where my cousins put up where they did it with one other group. I'm forgetting which group if I can pull it up here. Um, but anyway, the reality is that we live in a multicultural society called the United States of America. America likes to Trump beat his chest over the fact that we have the Statue of Liberty. Statue of Liberty told you to bring your immigrants here, make a living, um, and anybody can make it here who wants to make it and rebuild their families here and become Americans, right? But then you have another underbelly of America that says, no, this is a white country. It's always meant to be a white country. Our laws were written for whites, which in theory is true if you really look at them. And we didn't mean for all of these foreigners, as some whites like to look at other non-white groups. We didn't ask for these foreigners to come in here and now become the majority speaking to the Latin community and Hispanic communities that are slowly becoming the majority in this multicultural society. So, where does that place African Americans? Obviously, we know where we place it at because we are very accepting. We're very accepting. We accept a lot of culture groups. If a white boy learns to rap, then we're happy about it and we praise him. No shots at Eminem because I know Eminem has supported our community to a certain degree in large part with some of our movements and he's come out publicly, okay? So I'm not bashing him, but all I'm saying is the elephant in the room. And the elephant in the room is that when we allow another culture group to come, now we're saying that he's the best rapper of all time. Can we not see the mistake in that? You made him the best rapper of all time. Why? Why can't he just be a rapper that has accepted our culture and melded into our culture? Why does he now have to be the best of all time? How did that happen? So here's the other argument. The other argument is okay, so black people were not allowed to play basketball, right? The NBA did not want black people. It was hard for us to get into the league, but once we got into the league, we took over. And now you would think that basketball is a black sport, so to speak, right? A sport that we created. Let's see who there's claims of the creator of basketball. Let's see, because I've never really even looked that up. But I have known that we were not allowed to play for a long time. On Tariq Nasheed's Hidden Colors said we came up with hockey, even though you would think that it was a sport dominated by others, but we came up with hockey. Hockey. Let's see what group created by who? What group came up with basketball? Okay. Okay, so it said the game of basketball, as is known today, was created by Dr. James Naismith in December 1891 in Springfield, Massachusetts, to condition young athletes during cold months. It consisted of peach baskets and a soccer style ball. He published 13 rules for the new game. So he was the first to publish rules for the game. Um, and when I look through different sites, it shows um, different people are claiming this man to have created it. And so I'm going to pull up a picture of him because you want to see who this is. Dr. James Naismith. Naismith, Naismith. Whoa, look at there. He almost looks German if you ask me. He looks like a German man. Maybe Jewish. I don't know. Let me see. It says he was born in Almonte, Canada. He died in Lawrence, Kansas. He was educated at the Presbyterian College of Montreal McGill University. He was a married man twice. Had children. And there you have it. American Canadian educator. He's an educator. And it shows pictures of him with the basketball. So, in theory, if we're going to go by race, right? A white man created basketball. And now black people claim the sport. Is that not an elephant in the room or not? I'm sorry. I just have to state the truth, okay? If I'm going to be authentic, I have to state the truth. We have dominated and taken over this sport, but we are not necessarily the owners of it. As far as ownership, there's a lot more African American people who own it, but we weren't allowed to play. We were discriminated against. And um, once we bought into the sport and wanted to participate, we began to dominate. Some might argue that's why black people are kept out of stuff because once we start getting involved, we take over. I've heard this argument before, which is an interesting argument. It makes me laugh because I don't know when, where, how, or why we will get into the aspect that human beings are what occupy this earth as far as our speciation. Dr. Ma'at on Sonetta's show and Sister Naya and some other sisters that was on there. I'm sorry if I'm forgetting some of the personalities and educators that were on there, but they did a show. Try to look that show up where they did a show on the origins of the European, right? I'll try to put that show in a link too, so you could just watch this information. But they went in depth into what the origins of the human being were. And they lay out some scientific arguments that are widely accepted now as far as the breakdown of speciation. And so basically the summation is that human beings are not that different. And we all come from a source so far as what we have been able to determine. And so when I'm talking about multiculturalism, I'm talking about the construct that we've created in society to date. Multiculturalism cannot necessarily be attached to genetics, definitely. There's going to be some aspects that are attached to genetics, but then you'll have people that belong to one culture group, and if you do their genetic breakdown and markers, you'll find out that their lineage can come from several different sources. Is there a pure race to date? Pause for a reason. Is there a pure race to date? I'm going to challenge and say no, because human beings have moved around this earth so much. Even when you go to countries where people seem to be homogenous and they seem to be alike and their phenotypes seem to be alike, if you do their DNA, you'll find out that their tribes have intermingled at some point. If you do the anthropology, you'll find out that their tribes have intermingled. Their tribes are a result of other tribes coming together. So this thing that we call race and culture is a construct of the human mind and is a construct of the human experience, okay? I'm a woman, okay? We care about these things. I am stereotyping because maybe not all women care, but I am a woman that does. Okay, and so that is very important to note. And I'm not trying to change the Black consciousness movement. I think it should go in the direction that it should go in. But if we're going to claim Blackness as a culture group, which is really not, it only describes a phenotype. It doesn't really, and it doesn't describe that well because this is Black, a charger. That's Black, right? That's Black. My watch, no, my watch is blue. That's Black. Some people say blue black, right? That my this is Black as far as the color. My dog is beating on the door because she want to come in, but today she does not control me. She controls me many other days, but today is not one of them. So we could argue. We're going to argue about multiculturalism. We're just going to argue about it because we all have different ideals behind it, and it is based upon our concept and ideals that make the argument stronger or weaker. But I just gave you the example of basketball, right? And I created a controversy behind it because we're saying that white folks are taking our music and taking it over, and they're disrespectful. Well, we took basketball over. What other sports did we take over? And I'm not arguing for whiteness. I'm not arguing that white people haven't been biased in history. I'm not arguing that at all. What I'm arguing is that human beings sometimes do the same things to each other, and we don't recognize it as that because of the social um, issues that surround a particular mindset. So let's look at baseball. Baseball is another good one. So if we go by baseball and its creator, baseball is said to be created by a man named Abner Doubleday. He invented the game known as baseball in Cooperstown, New York during the summer of 1839. Doubleday then went on to become a Civil War hero, while baseball became America's best loved national pastime. So let's pull up a picture of Abner Doubleday. And you know how I do. I will put these pictures up and won't apologize for it. Abner Doubleday looks like a Frenchman phenotypically, right? I've been judging these people by what I see and what they look like, and you judge too. It says Doubleday was a career United States Army officer and Union general in the American Civil War. He was born in Boston Spa, New York, June 26, 1819. He's fought in battles and wars, Mexican-American War, Third Seminole War, American Civil War, American Indian Wars, and he was married once. His education was the United States Military Academy. That's interesting. You don't see too many people education being accredited to that. And he had siblings. Okay, so that's what it says about this man. His position was an officer. He's even pictured in his officer's uniform. But he created baseball. Who is the most drafted player in baseball today? It is what we call the Latin Hispanic community, and some of them are African. It's so hard with all these damn titles. Some of them have African lineage, but it is mostly, if we're going to look on the surface of it, Latino and Hispanic people are playing baseball in the majority in this country. Okay, soccer is another one that I don't like to use because soccer has been multicultural for a long, long time. They broke that barrier a long time, and people go by their countries as far as the teams in which they play. So soccer is a little bit different to me, in my perception. But that's just a lesson right there, you guys. I've given you two sports in which uh, were created by another culture group, and another group has taken it over. So it stands to reason, what is our perception and breakdown on someone stealing something from another? Is it not giving respect to it? Because do you hear a lot of people who play the sport now give homage to the creator of it, or are they giving homage to those that came before them as far as the players that they recognize and inspired them? That is the elephant in the room. I can't change that. I'm bringing it up not to dismiss the argument that Black people culture is stolen and gentrified. I agree with that. But what I'm saying is that are we doing the same things, and what makes us different? Okay, I will say one thing that makes us different is that we don't try to despair another group because of our discovery. To my knowledge, we don't try to count anyone out. Remember, I told you in our culture we are inclusive. We include people, and we don't get enough credit for that. We're very inclusive. Okay, um, it's a dynamic argument, man. It's an argument that I find a hard time getting my head around, because it's so complex and it's so deep, and it really speaks to who we've become as human beings and how we perceive things. Okay, but those are questions, okay? And so when we're navigating multiculturalism, right, and we speak out about black and white, which I have this ongoing joke that I say to myself and I've said to other people, is that while mommy black and daddy white are fighting, or daddy white or mommy white and daddy black are fighting, you can switch that around however you want. The other cultural children are in the room, in the corner, in the fetal position, wondering when will it stop. Think about that. We fight about black and white so viciously that those who have other cultures in their mindset, they just sit back and watch us. Because black and white have been arguing for a long time, ever since its creation. And I don't now, one thing I don't do is I don't blame black people for that. I don't blame black people for the separation of the races. I blame white people for that. White people did that one. You guys get credit for that one. I'm sorry. The culture group that identifies with white, you get that one. You're gonna have to eat that one. You're gonna have to take that. Okay, because you created that. You created that divide. You created that division. Okay, and you gonna have to take credit for it. And so I was supposed to send out a text earlier. I'm sorry, y'all. I gotta send this text out now because if I don't, I may mess myself up. Oh, it's my cousin's birthday. I almost forgot. I'm horrible with birthdays sometimes. Happy birthday, cousin. Happy birthday. It's one of my cousin's birthday. I'm not going to say her name because she may not want to be put on blast like that. But happy birthday. I'm sending her a text now. Happy birthday. So I hope she's having a wonderful birthday today. Um, and that's not the text I need to send out. So pause, you all. I need to send this out now because if I don't, I might mess myself up. Okay, sorry, y'all. I just have to send this out because I realized that there's something I need to do that I do not do. Okay, message sent. Thank you for the pause. All right, so um, all this ties into the socialization of living in a multicultural society. And sometimes what we view as multicultural is what we visually can see, not necessarily a person's background, because we don't spend a whole lot of time asking people what they are or where they're from. And I've learned in speaking to other cultural groups that that's a very, very American theme. sometimes to look at people and ask where they're from. Um, not that other when you go to other places they don't ask, but I mean it matters to us more than it may matter to other cultural groups. And it's plausible that other countries may not have as much exposure to other cultural groups as we do. I mean, you have lots of culture groups here. Just take a look at uh, our census survey, and you can compare that to other census surveys of other countries because they'll publish them too, and you'll realize, wow, these groups are really different as far as how they perceive that. This was a hard topic for me because it's so broad. I had a hard time narrowing down what I wanted to look at. So another thing I want to go back to that GDP survey. You saying, why you keep talking about GDP? Isn't that economic? No, um, because I link um, resources. I link a lot of different things to the multicultural society in which we live. In a lot of ways, the United States is a user, okay? And this is how I look at the United States. We use people. We use people for their knowledge base that comes from their culture, and we plug it into um, our grid, and we make it seem like, unfortunately, white America, you have to eat this one too. And then white people take credit for it. You have a lot of white people in our country that think that they did everything. They think that they created everything. They think that they invented everything. They think that America was built on um, white values. To a certain part it was, when it began to discriminate more, when it began to realize what was happening, when other cultural groups who were already here and were coming into the country. For those who were greedy, the culture of greed is what took over their mindset and what made them write some laws the way that they did, because they would realize something, right? Something would occur. Like, for example, I looked up, it was a woman who was mulatto. Her father was I believe, a doctor or something like that, and her mom was a former slave, and um, or she may have been a current slave. But anyway, with this story, and I have to try to find a story and put it in there for you. What happened was, this woman fought for her rights, for land ownership. Okay, um, and she went to court and she won based upon the current laws that were on the books, because it said that you had to have certain qualifiers, which was, you had to be Christian. That was one of them. Isn't that odd? You had to be Christian to be a landowner. If you were Catholic, a lot of people don't know that Catholics were discriminated against in this country at once upon a time. So if you were Catholic, you could not. And it's a still backstory behind that, because the Protestants and the Catholics fought. And if you look at our president history, most of our presidents were Protestants. Okay, so there's a reason for that. Um, you had to be from a family with a particular lineage, okay, which her father was of that. And I think it was a third qualifier, but I'll find the story for you again because I was reading it in the past and it was very interesting. But she won. She was mulatto and she won her right to own land, um, based upon the current laws. And so what the dominant group, which wasn't even really, I guess they could be the dominant group because they had most of the money. But what they did was they went back and they rewrote the laws. They said, "Oh hell no, we can't have this because they gonna work around us, and we don't want to work around." And so, um, sorry, got to respond to this text. And so, what if you want to look at laws in our country, our laws have always been very reactive. They haven't necessarily been proactive. They've been reactive, and what they're reactive to is an event will happen, and then um, people will go and change the laws based upon it not satisfying one group over the other, which has been our discriminatory past. We've been very discriminating in our past. And so we sought to, as a country, I mean, I don't mean we as a certain demographic of people. I mean, we as a country, if we're going to look at our country as one, if we're all American, right? We as a country, we actually purposely change laws based upon benefiting one group over another. And that has been our history in large part. Very reactive, very discriminatory. Raider, Raider, are you cooking? You need to be in here while you're cooking. Yes, but water can boil out very fast. Please pay attention. Sorry, mommy moment. Okay, and so a lot of our laws have been written against multiculturalism, which is where you came up with the misogyny laws. After she won her case, the laws began to read out that you couldn't marry outside of your culture group. That's where that came from. This lady, this one woman who won her case because she was a woman and men back then did not want women having nothing. Okay, women were not in a station to have anything. And her father had died, is what happened. And so she wanted to claim her father's land. And they were like, you're a woman, you don't get to claim her land. Go sit down. Where's your husband? And so she fought and she won. And so, sorry, I'm arranging something for later after the show. I got to do assignment based. And so, in reference to multiculturalism and navigating, this is how some people have responded to multiculturalism with discrimination, with manipulations, and with greed. Okay. And so, what we're finding and living in this social construct that was created from stolen Africans, stolen land, um, and from basically putting down one group so that the other benefits. This is something that whiteness doesn't want to acknowledge, or when it does acknowledge it, acknowledges it from a place of, well, we did that because we had to, or because this was supposed to be a white country anyway. There's a lot of excuses made for it, and now the response, because again, we are reactive in America, so now the response is um, people who are claiming African origin, as far as their culture group, they don't want to be associated with this country anymore. In that aspect, they want to separate. They want to create a national brand, and they want to um, create a national brand that will give us our own sovereignty. And I can understand that, but strategically, it's not a viable option, in my opinion. And it's not a viable option because you're going to have a country within a country fighting each other, civil war. Civil war doesn't help anybody, and there's always more innocent lives lost than there is um, benefits. I mean, you even still now have Confederate soldiers walking around wounded and hurt, not alive, not for real, but their ancestors and those who believe in that ideology. They're still running around here trying to gain momentum. So, who did that really help? And now, those who want to move on want to take those statues down, want to take those memories down, because it's not about a matter of history. We're not saying that it's not history. I agree with those who want to take it down. But in my opinion, the losers of war never get monuments erected to them. They were the losers, okay? And so you keep that in the history books, maybe in a museum, okay? But to have them out in front of a U.S. building is very contradictory, because what are you saying? You're saying that these people believed in slavery, and you got people who walk by whose ancestors were involved in slavery, and so we're supposed to look at that statue and all? No, it's contradictory. And so in our society, we deal with some really serious dichotomies where um, this multiculturalism does pose issues. And it's because of America's greed. Look, we're top producing, we're happy to be the high GDP, but at what cost? Where did some of that money come from? Where did some of those earnings come from annually? Now, in recent years, you could say, oh no, that GDP doesn't have anything to do with slavery. But one would argue that the legacy of slavery creates a reciprocal effect in which people are still able to um, have wealth based upon this concept. Okay. So um, this show's not going to be very long today. It's not going to be my 2 hours because this concept is simple, but it's simple in discussion, but it is far reaching in concept. And so it's going to take searching among ourselves in our own time to decide what position we take in reference to this. But I'm stating to you all my position. I do believe in separating ourselves for the matter of replenishing our culture, for tying finances into our own community so that we could build strength. Because if we're in the public health model in which I study, they don't reach out to the performing group except to study it and say, let's use that as a model. What they reach out to is the less performing group to figure out what the problems are and how to fix it. So that's what I'm doing. I'm looking at African Americans, every statistical number that you come up with, somehow we're performing at the bottom, although I'm not sure that those numbers are completely correct. And I want to help solve the problem of who do we include in our culture group? Are we including those who have African ancestry only as the primary focus? But what if there's people who truly identify with our culture and like the Rachel Dolezals, right? I'm gonna tell you that lady made me mad. I'm not gonna lie. I did not like what she did. I didn't like how she did it. I have listened to her speak on the Philippe Shock Matthews show, and I kind of understand her a little bit better based on her background. You have to learn her story on your own. There was abuse in her background that she's claiming by her parents, and so there's a role there's some additional information that plays into her choices. Okay, I'm not saying it's a good excuse, but I am saying that there's always cause and effect, and we have to be willing to evaluate cause and effect. If we're not willing to evaluate that, um, then we lose objectivity. If I want to be an objective individual, then I have to look at the facts. I have to look at what has happened in a person's life. Now, because she has lied before, can I believe her story completely as well? It's another elephant in the room. Now she's claiming all these things. I don't want to take away from her story. I can't tell her what happened in her life. I'm not that person. I'm not that strong in my convictions as far as against other human beings that I'm going to tell them what their experiences are. That's not me. But what I do look at is sometimes the way that you come out and sometimes the things that you put forward first are what people see the most. And she has explanations for a lot of things that she's gone through. She's married to an African American man now. I'm not sure of his complete background. And she does have biracial children that she considers to be black. So it's an interesting concept. So what do we do? And my question to you, audience, is what do we do about the people who identify with the black race? They don't want nothing to do with the white race as far as the culture aspect of it. They don't want anything to do with what white people are doing in this country in the majority. They identify with the black race. They identify with our experience and they want to be a part of it. They want to help. What do we do about those people? In Haiti, when they won their revolution, they offered citizenship to those who were non-black, and they told them that if they accepted the culture and fought with us, the Haitians, okay, as they perceived it, that they would win citizenship under the umbrella of being black or Haitian, which was Haitian black, right or wrong. I'm just saying, are we creating more enemies or are we including people who are like minded to us and understand our struggle and want to fight for it? And those people are, okay, let me give this example. Let me do it this way. We like to argue the difference in slavery, the slavery that the African continent implemented and the slavery that the Arabs and the Europeans implemented. Which you can argue that some of those Arabs were European, they just amalgamated and became a different culture. Anyway, that's anthropology. But the difference that's being argued is between chattel slavery and between slavery prisoners of war. So it was said that people who fought between warring tribes, when one tribe lost, they didn't just annihilate or kill them necessarily. They would offer them to become part of the new tribe, adopt the cultures. Our culture won. We're stronger than you, so you need to adopt our cultures. You can marry our people, and you can become us. That's what I mean by different people on the African continent have um, melded within each other. They're not just one tribe. There are multiple tribes that have come together over time due to migration patterns, due to warring. A lot of different aspects fall into that. And so when they came together, it was either I guess in some cases you would die, you would take death, or you amalgamate into our culture, become part of our culture, right? Or you stay forever a prisoner, or you stay forever in servitude. But they would allow them to work off their servitude. They would say, okay, we're going to be in servitude to this tribe, you would never have status for 7 years. And after that, you could take one of our brides, you get status, and you become part of the tribe. You go through a rite of passage ritual. Happened, right? And so when I give that example, would that be the same example to the culture that we call white or Asian or Latino that want to be a part of the African experience, who like the African experience? Maybe they have some lineage in their background that you can't see because we judge by phenotypes. Okay. If we can get past this phenotypical view, is it possible that we could create a new culture in America that identifies with Blackness? Is my question. Do I look like I have not been affected by multiculturalism? Okay. I choose to identify with Blackness. But if I'm going to be real and be honest, um, within the elephant in the room, and that is Maya Institute has white in her family. To my knowledge, on both sides of my family, my mother's side and my father's side. So am I supposed to say, oh, I'm not Black enough? Me and you might get into a fight. Me and you might have some words. I'm just being honest because nobody's going to tell me I'm not Black per the culture description. No one's going to tell me that I have not lived the African American experience. No one's going to tell me that. You're not going to say it to my face. You're just not. And you're not going to be able to get away with it. Now, I've been on Twitter and people say different things like, oh, bed wench and all that stuff. And I just laugh at them because you in kindergarten, to me, you name calling. Okay. All you doing is you can't argue with what the arguments that I made. And so the only thing you can resort to is name calling. That's fine. I'm used to that. But I make good arguments and I make people think. That's my point. You have to think. So now we said we're going to talk about solutions. And so the solution is rethinking our value system. What is it that you are really calling multiculturalism? Who is in this group? If you have a movement that you're trying to get off the ground, or if you have something that you're trying to achieve, it could be a product, right? It could be a product. Do you only solicit your product to African people? Or can other culture groups buy your product? When does multiculturalism matter and when doesn't it matter? When should you implement it and when should you not implement it? I keep saying we got work to do. We have become like them. This Eurocentric, European way of thinking, which has always been exclusion. If you go back to their history and you look at how their kings and queens behave towards the people and not all of them, I can't say all of them, but when you look at their history, a lot of them, they would build great castles with many rooms and they would live in those castles and the people outside of their court would be starving. Is that who you want to pattern your life after? If we build momentum and we build, wealth and we learn to work with each other, are we going to begin to behave in the same way? That's my question to you all. Is that what we're going to start doing? I'm not into that. I'm just not. I'm not into that. I'm not into being tricked again by people who come in wolves in sheep clothing and behave as if they have our best interests at heart. Yes, we have to screen for that as well. But I am not into building an African-centered society based upon African principles and then base it upon discriminatory behaviors. Because if you learn anything about the Afrocentric way of going, or the culture of many African tribes and countries and tribal groups, it was not like that. And unfortunately, the Achilles heel of that was that sometimes we lost footing because we became too accepting. There is a such thing. You do have to watch people, just like people in your, you watch people coming into your family group. You invite them to your picnic or your luncheon or whatever. And if they there to cause trouble, we're not inviting that kind no more, right? But if you're telling me that if people are willing to accept the African-centered way of learning and being because they realize that their ancestors afar in their lineage were in fact African, and even though their phenotype, their skin is lighter, you're telling me that you can't accept them? They're not Black enough? Come on, y'all. We have to begin to thinking on a broader level. We have to begin to understand what it is that we're saying. I forgot I didn't put my live stream up. Oh well, it is what it is. People can watch it later. But we have to begin to realize what it is that we're doing. We are becoming the same thing. What makes us any different than those who claim to be the dominant group and they want to create a little club or exclusionary group? We are doing the exact same thing as the other group. What makes us any different? Sometimes in our struggle to get out of this oppressive lifestyle that we've been living, we become the same animal that we're fighting. How do we get away from that? How do we get away from that? It's going to be very hard to get away from it because I suppose when you're in a warlike mindset, um, you begin to do things that, like for example, soldiers who go to war. Okay, they go to war, and the culture becomes rape and pillage. How did we get here? We were over here to liberate or to help people, but now we've we've created a war culture that we didn't really intend to create, but now we're in the middle of it. You know what I'm saying? So how do we get here? It's not the one I wanted. No, it's not what I wanted. Sorry. Um, so that's an important thing to think about, y'all. That's an important thing to think about is, are we becoming the very thing that we hate? That's a hard question to ask yourself. And a lot of people don't want to admit it, but we are becoming the thing that we hate. Putting up the notifications. I forgot to do it early on, but hey, it is what it is. We are becoming the very thing that we hate. And we don't even realize it. We think that we are progressing in the way of blackness and awareness, but we're not even realizing that we are becoming just like those who oppressed us. And that's not cool. That's more concerning to me than anything. And it's deep. It's deep because I feel like that's the trend. I feel like that's the direction that we're going into. Just like you have people who believe in different religious dogma, which is what I get into my every fifth show, right? My every fifth show, I do religious um, contextualization and what I've found. I don't expect for anybody to believe what I believe. I'm just letting you know information on what I've found and what I've seen and what I've learned and what I've practiced. Okay. But now we've got people arguing over religion, right? Oh, my religion is better than your religion. My God is better than your God. And so my God's going to kill your people. I've never thought spirituality should have ever been about destroying or destruction, which is why I've made the choices I've made in my current spiritual life now. Because if we say in one breath, we should not kill people or we should not harm other people, but then we say in another breath that I need to kill off people who don't think like me, what are you really saying? What are you saying? You're talking out of both sides of your mouth, as the saying goes. I don't know. This is tough for me. I think I contemplate on these things a lot. I stay thinking a lot. And I'm just so afraid that we are losing ourselves. Some people are saying the Black conscious community is losing momentum. The elephant in the room is I would have to agree to a certain part. And I would have to agree because we are starting to implement policies. We're not inclusive anymore. We're not willing to welcome different ideas. We're becoming personality worshipers. So, oh, this person cool or this person beasted this person out. It's not about the information anymore. It's about who beasted who out. Oh, they cussed them out or they got them. It's become a sports arena in a way. What was created by Sonetta as far as debates have now become just boxing matches that are bloodied. It's not even about exchanging information. First of all, and not to be too critical of my brother, because I know he did what he needed to do to get everything going. Because sometimes when you're creating things, different ideas come along. Like I said, sometimes we're reactive. And so when you create an idea and you're trying to get it off of the ground, it goes in sometimes directions that you didn't anticipate that it would go. So in his defense, I would say that what he created was based upon the information, but what it morphed into is not necessarily what he wanted. And he says that all the time on his show. But what I've noticed, number one, is there's not enough balance. And I feel like the brother actually has been listening to the sister saying it's not enough balance. You need more women and men. We are the first teachers. So how are we boxed out of the dialogue now? You have certain brothers that say, oh, well, women are not meant to teach grown men. We teach y'all every day. Whether you know it or not, it may be your own ignorance that you don't realize that you're being taught. But we teach you every day. This is still speaking to multiculturalism because we're bringing in different culture groups, different ideals, religion being one of them, as to how to guide our people, how to guide our people into liberation, and how we're treading these waters of multiculturalism in order to get our message across. Our message is becoming convoluted. It's deep. And I honestly don't have any answers for this one. I'm talking about it, but I don't have any complete answers. I could just tell you what I see for right now. I haven't come up with any solutions for this particular obstacle course. I have not finished this obstacle course yet because it's still ongoing and it's being built upon as we move along. This is the kind of obstacle course that's growing. It's not static. It's growing. It's morphed into something else. So all I ask from you, brothers and sisters, is to really evaluate your thinking. When you begin to talk about black this and white that, and you calling people names and you're telling people they're not black enough or their thoughts are not black enough. What are you doing? What are you doing? And then last, I'm gonna put up a video that I came across of a brother, two brothers debating. One brother was part of the Fox network, and the other brother is an activist. He does other things, and they were debating um, just what's going on currently in our country. And the debate was so interesting to me because what I saw was a symptom of what's been going on. And I'm going to let you all judge for yourself. I'm just generically call it a symptom of what's been going on within our African American community and why it speaks to me why we cannot come to a consensus. These two brothers, very intelligent men, both accomplished in their own right. They both have a level of success, but their ideologies are so night and day on how they perceive the world around them. And I want you all to watch that when I put it up and really think about what it is that you saw. I'll put it up tomorrow because I have to review my recording to, put up everything that I say I'm gonna put up. But that's all I have on multiculturalism, you all. It's not anything so deep. It's not anything that's just mind blowing, shocking. Um, it's more an ongoing effort to try to create unification between those of African rooted origins who are willing to identify with those origins, those who phenotypically meet the threshold initially, but then how do we include that into others who didn't know that their ancestors came from this same origin and may begin to want to explore that? That's a just question. You know, do we only identify with those who phenotypically meet the threshold, or do we begin to include what we may perceive as others? Who are the others? When black mommy and white daddy, or white mommy and black daddy are arguing, and the other culture groups are in the corner squatting in the fetal position because they don't know where they fit in this argument or in this life of argument that they're having. All because the original sin of slavery. That sin has not left us, and its effects have not left us, and it carries over into our lives in the most profound and daunting way. We're not able to solve the puzzle. And that is the reality. That is the elephant in the room. We have not solved the puzzle. None of us have. Even those who discriminated thought they solved the problem. They haven't, because the problem still eats at them every day. They have to constantly create defense mechanisms against that issue of discrimination, slavery, prejudice, and bigotry. It has created a subgroup of problems that's never going to go away. Not as long as we keep in the direction we're going on. But I thank you all for watching. Again, this is a shortened show. I hope you learned something from it. I hope you learned from what I apply here. You all take care on this Sunday. Peace.